Welcome back to the Geometric View, episode 47, season 4. Today we go over the periodic table of elements, the spiral periodic table of elements, and how everything is helical and toroidal based. We go and we cover Walter Russell's spiral periodic table of elements, Mendeleev's periodic table of elements, as well as one that I have created. I'm Buddy James, your host. Let's get into it. Let's get into the circuit. The best way to support us is on PayPal, goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you. And Russell Toll here on the line. Welcome, you guys. Welcome everybody to the Geometric View. This is episode 47, season 4. Only one more episode to go till season 5. And today we will be covering quite a deep topic, the periodic table of elements. We go into the spiral aspects of it, the helical aspects of the perturbations, basically there's an emergent toroidal periodic table of elements that I created that we'll be going over. That's very similar to Walter Russell's spiral periodic table of elements. So we'll be covering spherical propagation as perturbations of the ether, which is just the wobbling that is in everything, the fractals, the frequencies, and the filaments, how everything wobbles together. And it gets deep into transmutation, how all particles are it's basically one particle, but it's just different pressures of the one substance of plasma that creates the different individualized particles and us. So everything is plasma according to this, and it all breaks down into matter, and matter disintegrates and integrates back into plasma and back and forth, and it's fed by plasma itself. So you have matter, which are like the nodes, and elements, which are like the nodes, all of the elements of the periodic table, and you have filaments that constantly nurture these and fill them up because they're all expanding and radiating. What are they expanding and radiating? They are radiative and cyclical and periodic, and we're going to get into all of this stuff here. So thank you for being here, guys, for episode 46. Aaron, haven't had you on the episode yet. Glad to see someone new here. If you want to give a brief introduction about yourself, or you can pass.
Yeah, sure. So I've been following the plasma universe for quite a while now. Actually design medical devices, and always an inventor and a tinkerer. And one of the things that I've noticed is all of the inconsistencies with the basic physics model and everything else, and the electric universe, and that's really filled in a lot of those blanks for me. And so I was invited by Ramon, and excited to be here.
Awesome. What a great invite. Thank you, Ramon, for the invite, and very nice to have you. Thank you for being here. We've throughout the years, I started electric universe geometry, or sorry, I did that, and also what I was referring to is the electric view. If you've ever seen the electric view on YouTube, Aaron, I'm not sure.
I think,
but anyway,
this.
So that's kind of like in a way, a continuation of this. It's a branch. It's kind of like a peduncle off of that. So we dealt with quite a few different people in plasma labs, and plasma physicists and engineers and electrical engineers and yada yada and on and on. And that's awesome. So are you an engineer as far as like you design medical equipment? that takes some sort of engineering, huh?
Yeah, I'm kind of an engineer, self-taught engineer, so to speak. Most of my schooling and my background is actually in the science, microbiology, physics, chemistry, and I've just tinkered and invented things all my life. So um, it just so happens some of the theories and discussions in the electric universe actually helps me get some of the early prototypes and stuff going, because the other stuff, like, I don't know if it just is incomplete or what, but trial and error is such a long methodology. But if I start with some of the electric universe theories and understanding electrical principles, then it seemed to be very useful, I guess, effective.
Yeah, universally helpful. Honestly, it's the more we know about this as an organism, the more we can help each other understand more about the electric universe. I mean, we got the Wood Wide Web, which is the fibers and the mycelial networks under the ground communicating using light and all sorts of other communicative systems, the microbial nets, and everything works in that way. And I hope today to kind of paint the picture of all elements are based off of pressure and the release of pressure, which is compression and rarefaction, and they're all a trajectory, basically of vortexes. It's a vortex-based understanding, and that's how you get the helical. Because you see the helical when you see a vortex in the tub, you can see the helical winding of it, and we're going to get into helical and periodic charts. And I really want to paint this picture of it being like lifelike. It's not a simulation. I'm completely abhorrently against the idea of this being a simulation. This is much more. This is a living, thriving, two-way systolic system that is moving charge in two directions, both centrifugally and centripetally. So there's a centripetal and centrifugal forces, but this is all at the beginning of how these helical filaments of the ropes on the sun are actually formed. These from the helicity of the helical knots and the filaments that are dancing across the whole surface of the sun, all the way off of it, coming to the Earth inside of tubes within tubes within tubes, based on pressures. So it's octaves of pressure that keeps the compartment of matter inside of these different channels, and these channels are called Markland Convection. Markland Convection separates hydrogen, and it keeps it on these long tubes inside of plasma called birkeland currents. And inside these birkeland currents, which is just filaments of charge, ionized matter that has been ionized, which is what plasma is. It's just matter that has extreme amounts of charge. It falls to these different places on these filaments, and that's how you get heavier elements and lighter elements, and how they're transported from the sun, how matter is created, and how it comes to the Earth, how these particles come to the Earth, rain on the Earth, and go around and bounce around the Van Allen belts and get supercharged and build this self-organizational loops, these plasma tubes around the Earth, that starts to actually form the reverberation for sound scaffolding to pull and extricate matter right out of the Earth, not needing seeds. It's from the sounds of the continuous plasma that is bombarding the Earth that is pulling up not only pine trees, conifers, but through all the animals are echoing and making the same sound of these plasma ropes that you can hear in the auroras. It's the sound of the auroras. There's creatures in the ocean that mimic the exact sounds that you hear inside of the northern lights. The northern lights literally is the sound of excited electrons moving from the North Pole to the South Pole, and you can hear them. They go. If you go to episode 9 on the geometric view here, and episode 10, this right around this time last year is when I discovered this. Now this is I immediately saw what these sounds looked like. I saw the images and patterns of what these sounds. I could see it like synesthesia. I could literally see these patterns because I've been dealing with this geometry for going on 18 years this year. The Dougherty set turns 18. So what I'm trying to drill home to everybody is these processes of light that moves from the sun to the earth changes and juxtaposes many different times, and it creates these tubes, these echoic tubes around the earth, and this is how matter continues to be created on earth. Not every atom, I don't believe that every atom here on the earth was forged in the sun. I believe in transmutation of the elements through telluric currents and electric currents in the earth. And these electric currents are nothing but the continuation of the propagation of charge and efficient charge distribution across and through the earth. And this changes one element into another element into another element, and that's why we have veins of gold and veins of calcite and veins of different minerals, because they come together with pressure and charge, and they're pulled out of the substance, the seepage of the substance of the other atoms around them, to electrically create and continue to create and transmute one element into the next element. So all elements are in this presentation, this electric universe inspired and presentation with this geometry, and is fundamentally helical, vortical. It's a vortex model. The Dougherty set is generally here. Let me share my screen now. But the Dougherty set. How do I share my screen? Oh. Sorry, guys, it froze up for a minute. All right. Entire screen. Share. Okay. Now, can you guys see my screen? Let's go to comments in the chat. And I'm going to pull up the image here for today, because I always design a map for every week. At least one map. I do lots of them every week. So anyway, can you guys see this like green blob right here on this map? I hope that doesn't show through on my screen. Okay, very good. Hopefully you can't. All right, hide this. So this is the image that we have for today, one of them. So I can show you what this is comprised of. It's all spherics, and spherics is the sound of lightning throughout these the sounds that I was telling you inside the northern lights. You can hear lightning in it, and the sound of the lightning inside of the spherics, or sound of the name of the lightning is called spherics. And it's called spherics for a good reason, because it creates, it is part and parcel of this model here. And this model is a direct proportional geometry of the inverse square law, using a square and inverting it inside of itself within itself, and then creating a Bessel function around it, a series of circles around it, and then repeating those series of circles in 12 different directions. And it creates this this concatenating, chain-like, repeating perturbations that we see inside of the ether. Now, this is just one example of the Dougherty set, and you can see that it kind of looks like lens flares when your camera's in the light. That's because this matches up perfect with lens flares. Wherever lens flares are in the geometry of them, however they are, and no matter where it is, even when I'm dealing with lens flares as a filter inside of Illustrator here, when I'm using lens flares, they line up with this geometry. And this is because this is Magneto hydrodynamic geometry, which is the geometry, first principle geometry that comes off of the sun and starts to create out of emergence and self-emergence, self-organized scales, self-organization, which is what helps create the octaves and also condense matter into wavelets. Now this geometry holds true at the micro scale and the macro scale. It is the geometry of plasma. So this is plasma physics we're talking about, or magnetohydrodynamic geometry, but you can call it so many other things. Call it quantum geometry, space-time geometry. I don't like to use the word space-time because there is a space and a time, but there's so many other things to describe inside of it. So what I did is I just highlighted a certain series that shows you that there is an oscillation. There's an oscillatory nodes of creation, or self-iterative systems and self-organized systems that are spiraling off of the sun. Now, this is the same as the center of the galaxy, the center of an atom, or the center of the nucleus, the center of the center. The center, everything has centers, and they're oscillating and radiating around, and there's an implosive and an explosive dynamic to that, which is the thrust inward and the gravitative thrust inward, and spiral vortex dynamics inward, and the spiral vortex dynamics outward, which is radiative properties and radiative spirals and geometries. So this is, I took one of these out, and you can see H is what I was talking about. And I also highlighted here that it is the square within the square, showing and proofing the inverse square in the square root 2 geometry. So make sure I'm oh, okay, good. All right. So I took this, and then I turned it into 3 dimensions, which is actually 5 dimensions, but this is 5-dimensional geometry we're dealing with here. And these are Birkeland currents. This is Don Scott looked at my images in 2017 and gave them a review, saying that my geometry, and this geometry, the Dougherty set, is as if you were inside of a Birkeland current and you could see all the intricate details. And because it is, you can see here the similarities of Roger Penrose's spinor theory. These are spinors or Hopf vibrations, and this is Eric Weinstein's geometric unity theory is a continuation or spin-off of Roger Penrose's spinors, and all of this comes together and uses this geometry here as the first principle geometries that are cascading off of any networks, systems, or dynamics. This is dynamical systems and solutions to dynamical systems. As we've been going through here, we've found just solution after solution after solution. And it all happens to be golden mean, golden scaling. It's all golden scalable. This is golden scaling. Everything is the golden scale. So to the left of me, you can see these shapes, these sculptures that I've created. Those came directly out of this two-dimensional geometry. I've turned them into three-dimensional crystals, and I'm showing off how the particle-like node type of the universe is enfolded inside of the helical filament stream, river of living waters life that's coming out of the sun and out of the center of the temple, where there need not be light to shine because it's always being pushed out of the center, creating more centers, thus creating more centers and becoming more complex. And the complexification of the whole network creates deeper neural networks. We're going to go back and find these fossilized neural networks. These are how they're created. This is Theodorian roots. And this is how matter is formed out of the spinning of regular polyhedrons. The regular polyhedra, when charge moves, charge seeks corners. So charge propagating outward, spinning, creates these Bessel functions, these Birkeland currents, these cylinders within cylinders within cylinders within cylinders, these fractal frequencies and filaments. Frequencies are a product of this first principle geometry of these spinning and windings like clockwork. You only have two ways it can wind. The chirality of it is it right-handed or left-handed chirality? And these tubes are coming out of our heads, and everywhere in the universe and people have been flying through them for eons. This is the universal internet. This is the network, fossilized neural nodes and neural networks. And eventually we're going to create software and hardware and be able to go to these places. Love is watching, looking through the network, the ocular, the oculus, the eye, the all-seeing eyes, the panopticon of everything is how these dilate, how spheres dilate. The dilation of the propagation creates the materia. You have to have this. This is the one we're studying today. This is the inverse square law geometry. This is how the Dougherty set's created. This is one cascade of it, one branch, one gate that has three gates to the east. This is the east gate. These are all east gates, easterly facing. So anyway, this is the first principle of how you get matter. It starts to scaffold off, and it creates charge, or the material, the the charge coming straight off the sun, breaks down into individual Birkeland currents, which are, so these are the Bessel functions. Then you move them out and they cascade and you get interference. You get inside of the system, which is good. You can't have life without interference. So you get constructive and destructive interference patterns that are created inside of this, but you also get all of the harmonies that subside as octaves inside of the layer, inside of these layers as they layer out. And what I mean by that is the filaments are within the filaments, are within the filaments, are within the filaments. This is what creates matter, and how matter in the elements are held along cylindrical type of where's the, ooh, that was the map from last time. Ooh, that's a goodie. That episode was not recorded, or something happened with it. Upset about that. We'll have to get to that episode some other time. But these, we'll talk about it right now, whatever. This is how matter is integrated, and it forms, and I'll pull up, let's see, I'll just pull up Markland Convection to show us an example here, because I've been talking about it so much. Okay, so anyway, this is what I'm looking at. These are the overtones and the octaves. This is sound. So sound scaffolding is taking these basic nodes and grouping them inside of each other. Now there's a fractal that does that, and it's called the Mueller fractal. Here's images of Markland Convection. I like to go here. Markland Convection is a process that takes place. So it separates the materials. Here's I love this image because that's just exactly what happens inside of the Dougherty set here with Markland Convection and opposing spiral vortices. All of the different elements on different channels of different frequencies, or it seems like frequencies, but it's more like counter-rotating charge up and down filaments. It's the most efficient way for charge to distribute from the sun, and as it does that, it either creates the elements and they nest outward from the center, go out. There's the filament axis right here, and this is commonly known. The geometric combination of electric and magnetic forces produce a radial force on nearby ions and electrons inward towards the center of the filaments. In other words, the filaments act as ion sumps, cleaning the surrounding space of matter. So it pulls it in, like I was talking about in the Earth with the telluric currents, the rocks. When you put charge on rocks, it pulls the iron from the remaining iron from around the area and pulls it into the current. I know because I've done it. I was actually, I think, the first one to actually do it. I haven't found anybody who else has done it yet. There's a certain type of rock that you need, and I find it out here in Michigan, and you put charge, you put the cables, the positive and the negative, and you turn the fractal brander on, or it's electropyrography, ultimately taking high voltage charge and pushing it through rocks and different materials. It pulls the outside materials inward. So this is what happens in these plasma ropes and that are Birkeland currents. Markland convection happens. So I'm showing basic geometries of Markland convection and how it scaffolds off. And we'll get into the periodic table of elements. I'll start my presentation here in a minute. Here's the similarities between when you look at these are toroids. So this is a toroidal emergent periodic table of elements, because it's not just the 1 or 2 dimensions or 3 or 4, it's 5th dimensional, and it creates this helical winding like the solar system. The solar system is the same thing. The solar system is a Birkeland current, a Birkeland filament. So I might as well type in Birkeland current real quick, and we can see that what I've been talking about is the auroras, the northern and southern lights, the aurora australis, and the poles move along the Earth. But anyway, here's the Bessel function, the Gaussian Bessel filament, Don Scott's model here of the counter-rotating concentric cylindrical model. And this is how I knew what I was doing was the Dougherty set, or what I was doing was Birkeland currents. And then I went out and visited him at the conference in 2017 during the solar eclipse in the United States here. So these Birkeland currents. So anyway, now let me get into the presentation here. All right, anybody have any questions from my little bit of speaking about this so far? Let me.
I actually have a couple comments.
Okay.
So you were talking about the northern lights and some of the sounds and stuff that happens there. Atmospheric noises are not rare phenomena. They still happen. People tend to be too distracted. But Ramon actually has done a presentation about how during like the split of Jupiter and some of the rock art and stuff that he's been looking at, that it's arguably one of the origins of music, that the heavens singing and the horns of heaven and your atmospheric phenomena and stuff like that, that our current instrumentation was created to replicate those sounds, and it just coincidentally explains some of those mathematical events.
That's an amazing correlation, and I'm looking at a horn right now, a natural horn. I don't know what animal it's from, but it sounds amazing, and that would be the mimicry. The horn itself is mimicked in the scaffolding of the nature of reality too, as the horn here. Let me trying to click on it. As this geometry is a horn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a spiral horn. It's like a ram's horn.
Also, the Fibonacci sequence. Yeah.
Yep. It does express the Fibonacci inside of the quaternion filament layers of it. There's so many exciting things about this, and the future technologies that are going to be coming out of it is I'm just exhilarated to be the first one that a lot of people don't understand what he's talking about, because I've been so far down the rabbit hole of this that I'm explaining it. I try to explain it in layman's terms as much as possible, but there's vocabulary that's involved where, I want to, and I can explain this as an expression of pressure inside of the axial filamental universe. So you can see, yeah, you got any other comments? Yeah, I have some more to say about what you have to say there too.
Well, I don't think it's coincidental at all. I was actually early on. I was trying to explain back when I was stuck in the archaic physics model that they taught in school, I ended up like working my way through all of the evidence and all the studies and everything that has been done. And one of the conclusions that I came up with, and it again plays into all of these different sequences that we end up finding, geometries and such. But energy is actually traveling faster than light, and that's probably the biggest flaw that they have in the common model. Is they say nothing can travel faster than light, but energy and information and everything travels faster than light. And one of the things that happens, and you actually identified one of the reasons why, one of the as far as my knowledge is, that when energy is traveling periodically, it will either create like a cavitation, like a microcavitation or something of that nature, and it will collapse back upon itself and resonate at the frequency of where it happens to reside, whether that be it's traveling through filaments or currents or waves or what have you. When you create those dissonances and those harmonics, that's when that energy is able to. It doesn't really fall out of state, but it collapses upon itself, and that is transmutation of particles. And it explains why the universe is continually expanding. As far as we can tell, is that energy is traveling through everything, and periodically you will have some that will transmute, some that will continue to accelerate, and it just so happens that you can't measure any of it, because by the time you measure it, it's on the other side of the galaxy, right? Because it's traveling so fast. But
Oh yeah, yeah, it's exponential. The whole thing is exponential. It's really strange, and Don Scott talks about this in his model and with the sun a lot too. But also, what's exponential is the exponentials, the spinors and Hawk vibrations are exponential, and so is and they can all be explained using Maxwellian geometry and Maxwellian math. So electromagnetically, the theory is sound, and but it's really hard to put together. It's just taking so long. There's so much information. I believe that what I'm working on is similar to exactly what is going on there. There is so much information. It's so information rich and dense that it's so simple how it breaks down. It's hard to believe, almost. And Vice News just came out and was talking about filaments of charge and things like that, and creation being started that way. But of course, they don't mention any of the big names, or it's some new people that are writing about it. It's just ridiculous that they don't call them what they're called. They're Birkeland currents, and that's fine. They will be known as that because of the force of what's true and what's going to continue. I mean, some mainstream refers to them as Birkeland currents, but it's still seldom even talked about. They'll say plasma ropes or filaments, and things like that. And so, as above, so below. That's definitely one of the main ideas here. This geometry, as it is cavitaceous or cavitating, all things are cavitating. The whole universe, life is cavitation, and we come in through life with a flash, entering and cavitating in this bubble, and then this bubble just starts erupting, and just cells just keep exploding and dividing at the quaternion scale, which is the same way how these filaments divide, these filaments that are nurturing the nodes. We know that if the sun were to just disappear or stop sustaining the earth, everything would just die. All matter is being sustained and bound and wound inside of these plasma tubes and filaments, and they're rich, and there's hundreds of thousands of infinite amounts of them, and every creature on earth has a filament number ascribed to it. And if you mess with the filament above it or below it, it makes that creature non-existent anymore. And this is the wheel of the food chain, the solar cycle. This is literally how the food chain works. It also works the same way how matter scaffolds. It scaffolds using a super simple geometry that I put together and have actually have the chart semi-finished. I'm already into trillions, but I'm only on like this fourth or fifth line. It goes forever. These numbers that I'm talking about are different size cascading filaments off of central source. So what that means is they're all different sizes, different elements, different creatures. When the elements organize and reorganize and through cascading fractal recurrent recursions of the sound that keeps humming and pulling earth creatures into existence, this scaffolding is the scaffolding of the design is seen inside of the singing of the creatures. It's mirror mimicry all the way down. It's built out of it. It is the storehouse of, and this is a brand new theory of the origin of species. And I've gone through categorically in these episodes here, and I've just recently been working with this theory, sonobiology, how everything comes out of, is born out of sound, born and also subsides and sustains itself through sound. It's not just sound healing, sound meditation. It is the reason why tears are most often evoked in many sensitive or just in general people when we're listening to music, because it gets your body into a certain place that you can't get to, or it's hard to get to without the music. Just talking about it makes me want to cry. I'm starting to cry. The sympathetic resonance of things is what is everything, and you can sympathize with anything. A vacuum cleaner vibration going off, if you're allow yourself to be so sensitive, can really hurt you. Just the sound of it. What's the word of the people that have this condition? I forget. There's a word. There's a few words for people that have the different condition, but all that is sympathizing with that frequency and that vibration, and you can get drawn into it, and like all sounds can be really annoying, or if you're so sensitive, like, because I've talked from experience, because this happened to me, and I realized I was dialing too deep into it. You know, like if you watch The Last Mimsy and you hear the frequencies, and you talk to spiders and stuff, and the whole thing. Yeah. anyway, I got really
You talked
sensitive.
about synesthesia, where you have the crossing of the senses, audiophile, where like you
It has to be maybe neural, maybe deep neural, like when I
like
uh,
ASMR.
yeah. ASMR, you can become entrainment. I would call it neural entrainment, also another word for it, because really you're responding to it, you like it, you can avoid it. So it might be off-putting, but sometimes it's addictive, like people chewing or ASMR, yeah, different sounds.
Yeah, mirror neurons and stuff of that nature, firing and synchronization. You have another condition would be epilepsy, where the brain synchronizes to the lights and stuff of that nature.
Yep.
Too much so that it causes disruption in your biological processes.
Yeah, that's weird that this conversation got there, but it's here. It's neural. The whole thing is electrical. Um, you know, everything is electrical. But yeah, I think I'm gonna hop into my presentation. I haven't even started the presentation. I was just talking about this stuff. So yeah, the rock art is really, really cool. That helps express the plasma instabilities that we saw inside the sky in the southern skies. There was a plasmoid pinch in the Magneto tail, and who knows how long it stayed there, but it was recorded by the people who saw it, ancient people who saw it on the rocks all around the earth. To touch a little bit on that, yeah, that's definitely interesting. And we know about the plasma pinches and how it can happen, and it can happen even without a planet passing by the planets. So anyway, yeah, the electric universe is very, very intuitive. Oh, this is what I gotta open. Yeah, it just makes sense. I see you got a.
I put a video of some fluid dynamic stuff in there that I think is going to be relevant in the chat, so you should take a gander at that. It's very interesting to see how those different inks, toroidal inks, make some very interesting geometry.
Yeah, these are gorgeous. I've seen a few of these. They tried to replicate a really old one that was really done really well, and I remember maybe Veritasium tried to replicate it in the lab, and it's hard. Sorry, periodic table of elements, a cyclical, spiral, and electric perspective. So we'll start here with the Mendeleev periodic table of elements, the one that we're all familiar with, the most familiar with, most likely. But there's a bunch of different periodic table of elements. So Mendeleev, the Russian chemist, was teaching a course, and he was writing his lecture notes, and tried to write an inorganic chemistry book about chemical behavior of substances. And it came to him that there possibly is a pattern of repeated resemblance of behavior of certain elements. And so that's what he did. He proposed sometimes, people say he discovered the pattern of similar behavior and arranged the elements according to their atomic wavelengths. Later on, this turned out to be not so correct, but that's how it is in science. We learn the periodic table as the elements arranged according to the atomic number, which is an integer, a whole number. That's the number of protons in an atom of that element. So they arranged from 1, which is element hydrogen, all the way to element 118, which is the total number of elements in the periodic table today. And So we're gonna hop. This is a new or a different chart. This one was first done in 1850, I want to say, or well, either way, it was around there. And in 2019 was the 150th year anniversary of this chart. Walter Russell came and did his chart in 1921. I think he patented this chart, which is based off of octaves. So the Walter Russell Spiral Periodic Table of Elements. This is just a quote of his. All idea is repetitive, and no effect of motion once started ever ends. The end of an octave is but the beginning of another octave. The end of a cycle is but the beginning of another cycle. The end of a wave is but the beginning of another wave. Also, the end of a life is but the beginning of another life. There is no death. We cannot die. It says man cannot die, but it's 2021. Come on. Anyway, so yep, this is a diagram showing the 10 octaves of integrating light, one octave within the other. These 10 octaves constitute one complete cycle of the transfer of the universal constant of energy into and through all of its dimensions in sequence. Intense. So Walter Russell predicted the transuranium elements, like 5 or 6 different new elements that we didn't know about, and he has a bunch more that we still don't know about on here. So the transuranium elements, he predicted them, and that's how he got his oh no, that's not how he got his doctorates. He got his doctorates by teaching people how to find heavy water and what heavy water was, and publishing it in the New York Times. But so this is, as you can see, very similar to the chart that I've created right here. It's almost identical. Walter Russell and I were working with similar geometries. Well, see, he's working with, this is the almost exact same geometry, just laid out a little different. Now, this is because it is inverse square law. This is the square root 2 geometry that I show off right here, and this is why he came to so many of his conclusions, because he was studying this chart, the same chart that I've been studying for 18 years, and now I've created many more different charts and pulled so much information out of it as far as plasma physics and electric universe geometries and theories go. So there's so much more to say about this chart, but I don't know if I can zoom in on this, and I can't read that. But there's so much to say of octaves of pressure. So compression and rarefaction once again. The Dougherty spiral periodic table of elements. The individual perturbations that comprise the ether are composed of spherics. The elements all gyroscopically radiate off of each other. There is but one element. All matter transmutes from one element into the next based off of octave exchange of pressures. And that's why we have a wiggle within a bigger wiggle within a bigger wiggle, 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 wiggle. And like, not Robert Anton Wilson, what's his name, speaks to that. Anyway, he's a great philosopher. So you've heard me talk about mine a little bit in the precursor here. So yeah, there's much more to say, but it's going to be in the books that I'm writing. and written and working with. So this is a chart, another example of the Russell's periodic table of elements. And the orange and the pear here are to hold the papers down. And this is for scale, the ruler. So he has two different charts, one from an aerial view and one from a side view. I have the aerial view and side view in one chart, and it's showing what I believe he was up to when he was creating his chart here. But there's so much more going on down here. You get the Earth, you get the moon, you get the planets, why the planets are aligned and the places that they're aligned, the magnetosphere, why the magnetotail and magnetosphere are the shape that they are because of the surrounding geometries of lenticular geometry, which Walter Russell was talking about, it being a lenticular universe as well. So it's a motion, thought, substanceless universe he liked to talk about, and that's where that's what the still magnetic white light is that we use as inspiration to draw us closer towards source all the time. If you're always working towards source and drawing towards source on all of the endeavors that you do, then you're always moving towards source, and then you will be an example of source. It's not that we're God, but we are examples. We are in the image of. So anyway, you can see later in the next few charts, the other spiral periodic charts that I've found online, that these patterns are exactly indeed with these nodes, nodal, helical, toroidal, filamental geometries, fractal, you can conical, spherical, cylindrical, all vehicles. You can call this because plasma changes from one, seamlessly changes betwixt all of what I just mentioned: conical, spherical, helical, cylindrical, fractal. Plasma seamlessly flows between all of it because it's charge. It's what's your soul is being charged up with, and how you can expand your spirit here on earth to get into whatever spiritual things you want to get into. So it's these helical entanglement filaments here. The Russell periodic table of elements in two charts here. The Dougherty periodic table of elements in one chart with all the intricate detail included. We are all electric creatures floating in an electric sea of this electric universe. Everything in the entire universe breathes electrically into itself from the rest of the electric universe, which is outside of itself. It also breathes out of itself into the rest of the universe. Living. Here's another example of the pressures. Periodicity is a characteristic of all phenomena of nature. It's Russell's periodic chart of the elements, number 2. Fortunately, I can't read what's on the bottom right there, but that gives everybody who hasn't heard of Russell a time. Go have a time with that and experience it for yourself. Here is the entire 10-octave constant life cycle is simply an orderly periodic accumulation of the constant of energy into higher power dimensions, which reaches its max at the 5th octave, and the distribution of that accumulation through the succeeding 5 octaves higher power is accumulated time. So yeah, it goes on and on. Actually, I can read that, but the deceleration of speed and rotation of mass is the result of generation. Power is generated by resistance to speed of rotation and acceleration of speed of revolution. Power is thus accumulated from low potential of great axial speed to high potential of great orbital speed. Each element is greater in its mass than its predecessor because of the generative power of electricity, which acts as a brake against the high axial speed and diverts it into accumulating mass. The elements of matter are an orderly and periodic accumulation of redistribution of energy. Fourth, fifth, and sixth octaves. In the fourth octave, this so-called physical universe begins with but one of its elements known to man, the element hydrogen. Okay, so we can see that these natural helicoidal patterns that mirror shells in the ocean and mirror charge through space coming from the sun and mirror plasma distribution and galaxies, galactic filaments, is also a very small and orderly, or can be scaled small and orderly, as well as creating the elements out of the substance of the geometry itself. The geometry organizes the dispersion, the efficient dispersion of these elements, and then they're accumulated on the masses of all of the planets at the places of the nodes where accumulation occurs. And all of the planets, like similar to this, where the nodes are, but not equal distribution or equidistance, there is an accumulation, and each one of the planets are kicking off and spewing out dust and all sorts of stuff, and they have tailspin and Birkeland currents wrapping around them as well. So we're going to get into more about why and how it's all spherical propagation. And I'm going to read a quote here from Jason Verbelli. Sound, light, electricity. And Jason Verbelli, if you don't know him yet, is on the Real Verbs YouTube channel, or Jason Verbelli on Facebook. But sound, light, electricity, and gravity are all spherical propagations. Like a spherically expanding shock wave, outward in all directions from a point source. Within that spherical boundary are concentric shells like Russian nesting dolls. The distance between each concentric nested sphere is equal to a wavelength of light. Light is defined as the visible spectrum range for humans, which would be shock waves of nested concentric spheres that are coherently spaced between a certain nanometer wavelength, which is what light is. As those spheres expand through you, past you, around you, you experience the nested shock waves at a frequency of light at the rate of C, or sound at the rate of about 720 miles an hour at sea level, etc. Although sound requires a medium to travel. Electromagnetic radiation and light does not require any medium to propagate. But if there is a media present, it will be affected and present and present the already existing packet. There is media throughout the cosmos in any case, but it's not required for this emissions theory. And in this theory, there is no particle wave duality, since all emissions are spherical propagations. If you were to take a cross section of those nested spheres and trace a path on one plane from the point source, you would see that the wave on the XY axis, but it is not a wave. That is just a cross section of the nested expanding spheres. The wave is in regards to a two-dimensional graphical representation of a rectilinear path from a source of the actual 3D expanding sphere. So this is what's actually happening inside of the Bessel function of the sun. The sun creates these the sun is basically repeating the same Bessel function over and over, which is these nested concentric circles. That's a Bessel function. And that Bessel function is observed if you were to stretch this out into a tube and make it into a long tube, that would be a Birkeland current. And you have the counter rotation from one shell, one double layer shell of plasma to the next double layer shell. And the double layers are what creates itself by opposing itself. So, and I can show you further on the Dougherty set how this same recursion, this fractal recursion of the first Bessel function, fractal Bessel function recursions is what is actually going on. And I'm just realizing, putting those words together, it's making a lot of sense, because it's just repeating it over and over and over. And that's what creates the interference and constructive and destructive interference that creates reality, the lenses of reality and the building blocks of the different pressures. So taking into consideration what Jason is talking about here and continuing it on using Theodoretian roots, we see the projective dynamic geometry of cascade filaments. These are just fractal repetitions or recursions of the same identical, oh, this is, wow. I said that out loud. The iterative Bessel functions produce the process we see, perceive, and sense. The Dougherty network is first principle qualitative and quantitative magnetohydrodynamic geometry. It all starts as spheroidal. The perturbations of the sound, or the spheroid, creates the toroid repetition of this process, produces the Bessel function. Projective iterations of the Bessel function produces the helical filaments inside the Birkeland currents. So, yeah, that's basically what I just said. So, spiral self-organization. These are the geometry of the waves that are coming in. This is the geometry of the aurora borealis, the sounds of the aurora borealis. This is the geometry of those. They're called Whistler waves and helicon, Whistler mode waves and helicon mode waves. And helicon physics is the name of the physics of the breakdown of this. And that's why the geometry that I do is helicon physics, because it breaks down these individual, I was trying to figure out what this was that I was studying and creating. And it's very similar to the Native American dream catchers, the geometry here. But that's if you have both chiralities and subnested within the same system. But anyway, this is what we hear. This is what I was talking about, pulls up the pine trees, and the wolves actually speak the language of the auroras. Everything speaks the language of the auroras. And we all, like you said, your comment earlier, the beginning of singing and worship, all labor is an act of worship. And if you're doing labor, you might as well sing, because then you add another act of worship, and man, all of a sudden your bones feel better, you feel good at the end of the day, you know, like you're happy about your job, you're not upset, things are going good. That type of attitude should be instilled all the time, that attitude of active worship and being happy. And worshiping what? Worshiping the source, the center, the zero, the whole. It's all hollow. Hollow it is, hollow we are, hallowed be thy name. Amen. It's all hollow in the center. There's no actual center. The center is always still, and all matter is always trying to seek stillness, and all stillness is always trying to seek motion. That's what keeps the equilibrium state of things. That's what homeostasis is. That's why it feels good to grab someone's hand or give them a hug, or like what I mean by grab their hand is you exchange, if their hand especially is warmer or colder than yours, you feel that exchange of energy, and it moves from one state, to reach a thermal equilibrium. So all particles and elements are streaming from the sun, organized inside Birkeland currents. All the material and matter exist as plasma as it streams off the sun. The materials self-organize according to first principle geometries evident and exposed in the Dougherty set. There is a name for this self-organization, and that's Markland Convection. Helical everything. Here's me highlighting more of the axis, the dielectric inertial plane with the axis of motion moving outward. So this could be hydrogen, this helical filament that feeds the material element of hydrogen. Because I don't believe that one thing is just one. I believe that there's a filament for, like I said, a filament for each creature, which is a dual filament for male and female. Here's your male and female. This could be like one of the most common creatures, bacteria or something. Even though bacteria is mostly thought of as asexual or genderless. Either way, all the way up and all the way down, these filaments exist, and you have the male and the female aspect of them perpetuating the genealogy, which the genealogy dynamics is also the same geometry, the exponential geometry of 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so on and so forth. The toroidal and helical nature of the elements unfolding as a series of pressurized octave units. So then we get into, there's this other guy online here, and he's got his periodic table of elements, and this is exactly like what we were shown inside of the other ones of my images. And so yeah, so let me get into this here. Which I copied and pasted directly from his site right here, Quantum Art and Poetry. This is an artist's theory of the universe, I think. That's what he goes by. He goes by other weird names too, but that's the link. So the periodic table of elements is the cornerstone of modern chemistry, but in a way it is based on the paradoxes of quantum mechanics. In a new theory, the paradoxes of quantum mechanics can be explained, giving us a deeper understanding of why we have a periodic table of elements. Excuse me. This theory is based on just two simple postulates. The first is that the quantum wave particle function, or probability function, represents the forward passage of time itself, photon by photon. The second is that Heisenberg's uncertainty principle that is formed by the probability function is the same uncertainty we have with any future event. This process of continuous change, or energy exchange, we see and feel as the flow of time itself that we can interact with, turning the possible into the actual. Spiral periodic table of elements. This process is totally universal and interactive, from the largest object to the smallest creature, right down to the smallest element of the periodic table, will slow the rate that time flows, forming a curvature of space-time relative to its own energy mass. In this theory, the elements of the periodic table are standing waves over a period of time. Time is continuously being formed by the spacious absorption and emission of light waves of electromagnetic radiation. This forms a universe process of spherical symmetry, forming and breaking that forms the spiral patterns we see in our everyday life, with each element in the periodic table having a set position, forming the curvature of these spirals. So the beginning of that, I like, he says, he's talking about the forms. This forms a universal process of spherical symmetry, forming and breaking that forms, forming and breaking that. So you have to, that's the broken symmetry that I was talking about, the constructive and destructive resonance that is created, or interference. So with hydrogen at the center of a spiral periodic table, with the noble gases and the different groups of elements radiating out like spokes from the center of a wheel. And that's how Walter Russell does it too, with hydrogen at the center. So in the traditional periodic table, there is a problem to where to place hydrogen and helium. They can be placed on the left-hand side because of their electron configuration, or they can be placed on the right-hand side. But by placing hydrogen in the center of a spiral, we solve this problem. Also, by having a periodic spiral, we place the groups of elements that can undergo ionic bonding together on either side of the noble gases. Okay, so then it goes on to John Newland's periodic table, which is still part of the same paper that I referenced earlier. In 1865, the English chemist John Newland formed a periodic table where elements with similar physical and chemical properties recurred at intervals of 8, which he likened to the octaves of Western and Indian music. This became known as the law of the octaves, but it only worked up to the element calcium. Newly discovered elements further down the periodic table would not fit into the octave structure. Spiral periodic table of oh, this is still the same. This is the very last page of this article. This theory can explain a reason for this it is because the spiral symmetry is formed out of the broken symmetry of a sphere. As we go down the periodic table, the spiral symmetry becomes more broken and the elements become less stable. Only in 3 dimensions we can see the true beauty and wave-like nature of the periodic table. Each wave forms a period with elements that have similar properties having a similar position with each wave. So this is pretty much just like my theory, or similar to my theory and periodic table and Russell's periodic table. Here's the same Dougherty set, but highlighting different natural inherent dynamics of the system. Perhaps all particles are wound and bound within these specific quaternion octave filaments. It all seems to be fractals, filaments, and frequencies all the way up and all the way down. Now, this is the first 10 concatenations. Concatenate is to turn or curve or to wrap around like a ribbon. So this is the first, and the second one is nested right inside of it. Those two go together. The third starts its own first filament inside 3. Next one, double that, would be 6. So the 6th one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This nests right inside here perfectly, sub-nested. These are octaves and sub-octaves, and they nest, and this is how the particles, I suppose particles also interact and are formed inside of these Birkeland currents, Markland Convection, and the geometry of them. So this is the 4th. So the 4th goes inside the 1st because 1, 2, double that, 4, double that, 8. So 8 goes in it right here. And they all nest inside of each other. And that is how galaxies form, how star systems form, is along these pinches. And also, like the Birkeland currents, the outside and inside filaments of the counter rotation of the one layer to the next, like seen here. So this kinking up of plasma, when plasma does this, it's called kink instability. These are kink instabilities. But I also believe universal sounds, frequencies, if you were to sonify the data of the Dougherty set, you would create reality, AR, artificial reality. Sonification of the Dougherty set is reality because it's sound, and hopefully it's a sound theory. So Markland convection and Birkeland currents. Matter is plasma, and plasma is matter, and vice versa. All forms of matter flow in and out of each other with cosmic uniqueness. Plasma is ionized matter, matter that has been charged so much it turns into gas. Matter organizes inside of these filaments along double layers of tubes within tubes. This is called Markland convection. All of the periodic table of elements are based off of atomic weight. All particles organize in the concentric cylindrical sheaths as they are then bombarded on the planet as helicon mode waves. And then from those helicon mode waves, life and living organisms are organized and subdivided categorically through resonance and sympathetic resonance of space, resources, abundance of resources, and that's what can create huge upsets in ecosystems where you have just the scale is just rampant, like locusts. When locusts have a huge devastation, they grow together and get larger and become a different organism just by the rubbing up against of each other's wings and the lack of resources. So yeah, this is an image from man, I was going to write his name down. Thomason, a friend of mine off of Facebook, but showing more the helical type of knots. Like this is not, it is knotting. Everything has these packets, and it's all filamenting off of filamenting. So that winds up my presentation. There's plenty more charts to explore, but I just wanted to explore a little bit of the charts out there and the ones that are similar to the theories that I'm working with. So that's the presentation for today. I really appreciate you. Looks like we got Richard here now. Good, he's back online. It's awesome to have Rick here. So Rick, I don't know if you've met Aaron yet, but yeah, Rick, Aaron.
Yeah. We've conversated before.
Awesome, cool.
I think so. The picture looks familiar.
Do you know if?
Yeah, we were. I think we're in one of the other chat channels as well.
Freedom Party, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Is Neil doing the electric view?
Not at the moment. He's taking a break. He's having some issues that he's still dealing with, and we'll leave it at that. But I just purchased a new computer, so I'm waiting for an email to go and pick it up at Best Buy. So
hell yeah!
Nice. I said, you know what? This morning I went out and bought a new video card, or not a new video card, a used video card, and put it in my machine, and it didn't work. So I'm figuring that my motherboard is toast. At least the video card portion of it is, because I'm using the onboard video right now, and it sucks. I can't do my gaming, but that'll change shortly as soon as I go to Best Buy and pick up this new tower.
You guys have Best Buy up there, eh?
Oh, yay.
That's an American company, you fuckers. You taking that shit from us?
Hey, it's called free market.
I know, I'm just an asshole.
If you guys can come up here and sell stuff cheaper, more power to you.
No, I'm jealous of your country.
Don't be.
And then I'm really upset with our country in a lot of ways.
You have some good some good things about your country, and we have some good things about our country, and there's a lot of shit going on right now. So,
Yeah,
pardon
I
my
think
French,
Trudeau
but
is worse in a lot of ways.
oh yeah. Oh,
you have the best comedians in the world, though. They come straight out of Canada. It's like, what kind of school
Jim
do you guys
Carrey.
have? All of them. They're all from frickin' Canada. It's crazy the more you look into it.
Yeah. Most of your hockey players down there are Canadian, eh?
Eh?
For sure, eh?
And what's B? What's plan B? Eh?
Eh? I don't know what you're talking about, eh?
We don't have a plan B. We only have plan A's. Eh? Plan A.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
No retreat.
So I have about half an hour here, 25 minutes. I was going to go into the news hour. There's a bunch of stuff. I took a long sabbatical, and I appreciate. I'm I'm restructuring the geometric view. I have another lady friend of mine that is interesting, and she would add a good dynamic. I always like the male female contribution. Even though we're both pretty equally male female ourselves, we add a good spice to the conversation for sure. She was going to come on today, but she has some other stuff going on. So that's Haley. I hope she's on next time. And then I'm restructuring, and I'm bringing in some new people. So Aaron and Rick here next week is going to be. I'm hoping to have 2-3 more people at least to give it more, of whatever it is, consciousness flow coming straight off of us.
Yeah, I
So,
put a couple images down there in the chat feed. You might find interesting. Those are coming out of a biotech company in Carlsbad. So it just so happens that your medicine and your biotech and stuff like that, they're starting to get wind of some of these geometries and patterns and mathematics and everything.
yeah, this is really cool. This is okay. Copyright. Adam. Oh wait, is that Adam Apollo? No. 2000 to 2006. Okay. Very cool. Yeah, I see the similarities in what we've been talking about and the correlation of the patterns here. Yeah, it's
There's
cosmic.
another one
To my eye,
that's
it
really,
seems that they're just using geometry here. They're not using fractalization at the moment. They haven't put that into the mix, it seems. Go ahead.
it may be something that you would be able to contribute to this thought stream. But there's another one that I was trying to find while we were kind of wrapping things up, and it's the controversy between the 440 versus 432. So virtually all of the music and everything right now is in 440. Like they standardized that, which is actually in dissonance with biological systems. Whereas 432, if you can be more in line with 432 tuning in your music and everything, then it's kind of like the love harmony and everything. And there's a lot of interesting geometries around those conversations, but I wasn't able to find the image I was looking for.
Yeah, we've definitely delved into different frequencies. I had David, I forget his last name. He's a somaticist. He's one of the big somatic guys that is just a garage experimenter, and it was really good having him on, showing us all different somatic patterns.
Speaking of music, just so you're aware, not all bands play their music at 440. There's a lot of songs out there that are done at 432.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
Yeah.
tend to like those more. But an interesting thing to look into is if you go through YouTube, you go through some of your sound, like your music stations, your radio stations, all of those. They tend to compress audio, and then when they decompress it, it messes up any of the frequencies. So even if you try and listen to some therapeutic binaural syncopations or something of that nature, those compression algorithms can actually mess up the therapeutic aspect of it. And so that's why a lot of the therapies and everything that they were trying to build around like sound therapy and stuff, they didn't end up working out. You have to actually go and get a physical brass singing bowl or something of that nature to start getting some of those benefits.
Mhm. Yeah, I love sound therapy and sound healing. I went to a couple of meetings and had a great time with actually this lady that was coming back to town here, meeting up with her Monday to do some more music. Yeah, it's in the music, man. All right, I'm gonna start the news portion of the sequence here, and I'm gonna start it right here with this. This is a large scale drawing of what I keep talking about, the Birkeland currents and the Dougherty set, the Dougherty network, Theodortian roots. Uh, these are the roots and how they wrap as an azimuthal wrapping around current. And this is also how particles are formed and organized along the Markland Convection. So I showed this to Rupert Sheldrake, and we've been back and forth with correspondence, and he doesn't really understand it, and he doesn't get it yet. But when he does, like, I need to continue to, maybe show him some stuff, but I don't want to be pushing it. You know what I mean? I don't want to push anybody to try to understand it. People get it when they get it when they're ready, you know. And this is the geometry of morphogenetic uh, fields. The framework of the Dougherty network predicts that all morphogenetic fields are Birkeland currents, and they go all the way up and down into the micro, into the macro, on scales into everything. Everything is helical. Ultimately, this is what frequency, filaments, and fractals or vibration is. Morphogenetic fields or morphic resonance is mind fields that are based off of habits that create patterns. You can think of it as collective thought patterns. All mind and all mind fields are helical. It represents the whole cycle or cyclicity of everything nesting and folding back into everything else out of everything else. It is ultimately all plasma streams, the double helicity and duality of the front end of the Lichtenberg flow. So it's the very front end of a lightning bolt or Lichtenberg flow or charge, or the flash of light that happens when the sperm goes inside the egg. That's a flash. And I'm sure there's a flash of light that happens when we die. I don't know why this is only showing one thing. Did I click on it? Yeah, I must have clicked on it. How do I go back? Iridium's statistical Birkeland current distributions.
What do you think they're going to find in the delta that Perseverance landed in?
I think that landed. Oh, dude, we haven't landed on anything. We've never even left the atmosphere. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not one of those.
It's funny. They're calling it a delta, but you can tell it's electrical scarring. It's not a delta. Not saying that there was never deltas on Mars, but what they landed in is definitely an electrical phenomenon. So I think they're going to find a lot of carbon. they're likely going to find some residue of the electrical event, but they're not. I mean, that's probably the least likely place that they could find life on Mars, is in the middle of, like, you don't go into like the desert and find a lightning strike and say, oh, I bet I could find life here, because it's probably killed or fried or carbonized everything that was there. You would go to one of the poles or something of that nature, where there's remaining water. But
Right. You would think, right? I mean, we already know that there's living organisms inside of ice, underneath the ice shields, underneath the glaciers, in like there's creatures in caves, like we know this. All sorts of extremophiles that don't need light to exist. Like, I don't know, Mars is hotter than Earth, right?
cold.
Colder than Earth?
Yeah, it's about -70 something centigrade.
Oh, if
Yeah,
that was
I'm looking at the area where Perseverance landed. It's definitely an electrical scarred event there that happened there, without a doubt.
What's the name of it? Perseus?
Perseverance.
It's an amazing
Landing site.
Yeah, it's amazing technology, robotics. It is a big event for mankind, putting that rover there, but they're misguided. Right now it's a complete waste of money because they're going to the least likely point of life. I mean, they should have went to the ice cap.
Second image there. Yeah.
Ooh. They call it a delta. Well, I mean, okay.
Exactly.
Well, it looks like a delta.
I'm honestly, it does look a lot like a delta. It is a delta, I'd say. Electrical events, very large electrical events. I'm on the skeptical. I ride the skeptical as much as I can with electric universe geology, because it's really, it's I know too much to know that it's not all electrical. Most of it's not. But water, on the other hand, flows like plasma.
Well, yeah, we understand that there were huge flows of water going across the North American continent. We understand that, and it happened twice within 1200 years of each other. And we understand that these deltas fill up with water after they're created by these electrical events. I mean, you cannot discount that they were created by the snakes, in quotation marks, from the descriptions of the Aborigines in Australia.
Yeah,
running away into the hills.
Yeah, I agree with that. But
you can see their handprints and their footprints in the rock that had been softened but not heated. They were running away from these snakes that were carving the river systems out, and then the water flowed into them, and then we say it's all been created by water, but no, not so much. Water flows into low areas.
That black and white picture. Yeah, there you go. So no, one of the scaled out pictures of it.
Scaled out?
Yeah, there you go. That one right there. So they're saying that whole thing was an impact crater.
But it looks like a circular lake.
Yeah, that's and you can't that lakes don't.
Is this an image?
That's what they're saying it was before.
Okay.
But look at the blackening of the surface on one side of it.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that these thunderbolts, positive and negative on one side, they leave blackening. They leave charred surfaces.
Mm-hmm. So if you look at it like zoomed in, yeah, it looks like a delta. But when you look at it from this perspective, like that is like you said, the electrical snakes that carve, and then you have this this discharge here that creates the crater, and then it probably continued on, did this multiple times.
Well, we know Mars had multiple events on it. I mean, it approached the Earth 12 times. Each time it did, it made an electric glow connection between us. And the ancients described it as a column of fire at night and a column of cloud by day.
Yeah.
There's descriptions of this thing that happened. There's only description, and they only think it happened once, but no, it happened 12 times in the oscillation during the birth of Venus. When she slotted into the polar configuration, she pushed on Mars towards the Earth, back and forth. A number of times that happened.
Yeah. Well, she stole Mars's atmosphere.
Well, she stole Mars's atmosphere, but I think we got a huge portion of the northern hemisphere of Mars. 6.5 kilometers of its Earth landed on the northern hemisphere of Earth. Because if you hear Neil talk about it, he says the Earth itself, the ground itself, is thicker on the northern hemisphere than it is on the southern hemisphere. There's more Earth, more dirt.
I heard, or I saw an image, I don't know if it was real, on Facebook or something, of the, not Mars rover, whatever this name is of this one. Oh, Perseverance. Okay, drawing a dick and balls with its tires in the ground on the dust or whatever. I don't know if it was real or not, but I can see someone doing something stupid like that, like wasting all this money to go to Mars when people are starving around the world, and we have life to take care of on the world, in the world. What are we going to do when we find life on Mars? Spend a bunch of money to take care of it? Why don't we spend a bunch of money to take care of the life that already exists on the Earth, especially the humans, advanced cultures who help each other and or the whole organism of humanity together. I don't know. I'm pro-life. Can you tell?
Oh yeah, I think they spend far too much money on military. I mean, exploration is fine. Military, not so much. We need we need a new paradigm. We cannot keep going in this. The Velikovsky described it perfectly fine. We all have PTSD, and we're all trying to relive the events of the past, and we got to stop that. We got to start living together instead of killing each other. And man's inhumanity to man is rampant at this time, and it's got to stop.
I think the exploration and everything is great, and some of the technologies that's created around times of war is tremendous. I mean, people are very competitive in nature, but the problem arises when you have fiat currency. It all goes back to the currency, because the U.S. dollar is directly related to the power of the military. So that's your fiat currencies. It's valued based on how strong your country appears.
How much fiat you can throw at it.
Yeah. And so while the military has its place, I mean, there are people with extremist ideals, and we do need to protect ourselves against that. But the United States, as an example, needs to have that robust military because we use the fiat U.S. dollar. But the economic reset that is coming, we'll see a shift in that, and whether it turns us over into a corpocracy, which I think is probably worse.
Probably worse. Socialist what did you call it? Corpocracy.
Corpocracy.
Socialist. Don't forget about socialist, my friend.
Yeah.
Well,
so
socialism.
socialism.
Be a cryptocracy.
socialism is bad. Corpocracy is also bad. And like, if we have the economic reset in which they say that we're going to have, then it will turn us into a corpocracy instead of a socialist regime or something of that nature, communism. And they're both wrong. They're both like horrible. Capitalism is probably the most fair um, ideology that we've had, where if you're really good at something, you create value, then people pay you for that value. Um,
Look
but
towards the early United States before the Fed got their hands involved.
Yeah, it was company. It was Virginia company.
Their system of capital was the best in the world, and they were thriving. They were absolutely thriving because they were fair, and the government printed the money. And then once that changed, things changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you had the U.S. dollar is a private organization. The federal government is actually a private organization. When the states were federalized, so to speak. And
Yeah.
I hope this part of the conversation is not going to be aired, but
No, you can't talk too much about it. I mean, everyone already knows that.
yeah.
But I
you
mean,
get the federal oversight is where everything started collapsing. So the federal government getting into the education system goes south. Federal government getting into trade and currency and all of that stuff, everything goes south. But the federal government isn't the United States of America. There is a disconnect there. They talk about them as if they're the same, but they're not. Each state is supposed to have its own sovereignty, its own what do you call it? Anonymity? That's not right. Autonomy.
Autonomy, yeah.
Yeah, autonomy. But then you have the federal overreach, and all of the states are addicted to the federal's money. So that's where you have the breakdown.
Yeah, and then it gets into cryptocurrency and forcing people to use the dark net because it's the only place to spend your cryptocurrency, and opening up a megalopolis of the beast. I mean, just like the channels of Silk Road and everything else that is and will always be available on the dark net. As far as we know, the dark net. The FBI created a whole system of the internet that's I think, I don't know, 3 or 8 or 10 times larger than the internet, to patrol the dark net, because the dark net's way bigger than the internet, but it is the internet. Yeah, I mean, now there's cards that take that, like regular credit cards, so you can actually spend your cryptocurrencies. That's also interesting.
Yeah, I think cryptocurrencies will become the new currency because it's not fiat backed. It's not anything of that nature. And as long as it maintains the integrity that the blockchain has created, I think that it's a much better system. But the problem that you have is like anyone can create a coin, and they mine a portion of that coin for themselves before releasing it to everyone else. So they create like this fictional wealth for themselves, and then they launch it into the network and use the psychologies of human, the herd mentality or whatever, to try and drive the price up, and then they yank all of their money out and causes a collapse of the coin. So I think there are a couple currencies that like the problem with cryptocurrency is you have to have some kind of value, like the currency or the chain or whatever itself has to create some kind of value, whether that be
well, their value is the fact that you can't make any more. You can only have a portion of what's there.
right. Yeah, what is it? You have inflationary currencies such
And
as
that's
fiat.
kind of like another Ponzi scheme in my view.
Well, it's ultimately it's electric. If you look at everything through electric universe eyes, if you put on your goggles, you can see that Elon Musk is the key head figure for the electric universe. He doesn't call it the electric universe, but he's doing it. And there's a bunch of other central figures that are doing it and taking over. It's like the hijacking of the show of how we discovered plasma. Then electricity came out of it. Then they hijacked electricity, and you know, there's a bunch of ultimately money is electric. Money,
wireless communication.
money
The
is
Tesla created.
Elon Musk came out and said, I don't whether he says it or not, I don't know, that it costs more money to run Bitcoin, electricity. I don't know the exact quote, but there's a quote out there. The amount of electricity that's used to mine Bitcoin is just ridiculous. And like this resources, whereas there's no energy used, well, there's a lot less little energy used to make coinage and paper money and different things than the amount of electricity that's used to power Bitcoin. Actually, I want to find it.
Yeah. Speaking about what I was kind of heading towards, the coin itself has to produce some kind of value because like you were hinting towards, the amount of money that it costs to mine the coin is worth more than what the coin is, and that doesn't hold true anymore because the price of Bitcoin is actually multiples of the energy that it costs to mine the coin. But when you have various coins or chains or whatever that provide some kind of value, such as Ethereum, which is the world computer. So they're using Ethereum to for the computational power, and they're doing things with that computational power instead of just being a transactional currency. There are some currencies that are made specifically for being a transactional currency. But they have to operate extremely efficiently because you can't have an ant miner that is going to cost you $10 a day to run, but it's only going to generate you like $1 a day in the coinage, the mining rewards. And so you need to have some kind of intangible, not necessarily intangible, it can be tangible, but you need to have some kind of value that's created, such as mining for information, like the keeping track of records and deeds and documents, patents, inventions, information in the biotech sphere and everything. Like that kind of information needs to be maintained, and the people who create that value on the chain need to have a way of being rewarded for it.
Yep. Yeah, this is actually, there's a future here that I keep hearing of. I watch, there's a couple of guys that I watch. Right now, neither of them are. Ice Age Farmers, one of them. Adapt 2030 is another one of them. They're talking about all this cryptocurrency and stuff and these future trading commodities that are going to be bullied forward. And there's certain coins. Well, there's a couple of thoughts that I had that interrupted the two different thoughts that I had, but there's certain coins that they're going to release that if you can't get them at the beginning, if you're not wealthy enough to get them at the beginning, you won't be getting them. And that's like the centralized banker cryptocurrency that they're talking about. And and this could create the gap in the wealth, like,
All I'm gonna say is you put
really
labor on
quick.
top of the pedestal instead of money, things change.
Oh, and the other thing that I wanted to say is they're going to be taking, they're going to be analyzing creature for creature all of the different type of species in all of the world. They're doing this, and they're going to put a price on all of it, and that's going to be the universal value system. So as to put ecology first, and um, and have that as the value. So like that's everything. It includes everything. Think about it. Nothing won't be value. Nothing won't have a value, and they'll have a blockchain built backed off of actual reality and tangibility. So if you have how many conifers and like different things in your property and a bunch of other stuff, that's value.
Yeah, I think that could get very hairy really quickly for multiple different reasons.
It's hard for me to wrap my mind around that one, but
they're monetizing everything. Everything is being monetized.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and some of the reasons why that because you have the cascading reactions that happens in biology. Like we don't understand like all the different microorganisms. You put like a value on this specific microfungi, and you try and eliminate it in order to put a different one there, then you can create a cascading reaction to where like all of your conifers, which are very valuable or whatever, die because that single microorganism isn't there anymore. And like humans do not understand the complexity of Earth. Like you cannot recreate Earth on Mars, on the moon. Like you can't do it. You can create a new type of Earth or a variant of it, but you will not be able to create Earth again. But
you got to create a moon. You got to create a moon first if you want to create an Earth. You got to 3D print a moon and have nanobots put together each other and facet each other with as much capabilities as they can, and build a moon with to create a wobble and to create the heartbeat of currents, and which would create oceans and things like that.
And slot it exactly where the Earth is, directly, like in the exact spot of the same type of star.
You could create an anti-Earth. You could create
like,
one on the other side. You could create one on the what is it? The other side of where the Earth would be, the end. But there's already bodies of asteroids spinning around.
You're not saying that we're alone in the universe, are you, Aaron?
Oh no, not at all.
Oh, okay, cool.
What I'm saying is that we the amount that we understand, like you can take all of the world's inventions and everything and put it on the tip of a ballpoint pen, and then stab a, a piece of paper the size of probably the Empire State Building, and it's still not an accurate representation of what we actually know to be true in the universe.
Well, because you can't prove anything. Unfortunately, there's no way you can prove anything. The only thing you can do is proof things, and the only way you can prove things is geometrically. So the proofing comes down to an actual real math. A lot of other maths fudge numbers and constants, and there's no fudging. There's no fudging numbers and constants in geometry. It's actual.
Here's the problem with that. We were talking about this earlier, such as energy originating, traveling through the filaments or the wave propagation or the spherical propagation, however that specific energy is traveling. And then it collapses upon itself and transmutes into matter at some point in the universe or whatever. It could be inside of Earth, it could be in the atmosphere, it could be right in front of our faces. And we would never know that it was actually happening. But if you were to take, for instance, everything that we have right here We have all of the elements and everything on the periodic table. You put them on this nice frequency curve, and they all line up right along that curve, kind of in the different octaves that you were talking about. But it starts to break down when you start talking about radioactive elements, elements that are decaying or breaking down faster, or whatever. So those elements are still elements. They're still energy. They're still packets of energy, but they're at a dissonance with the frequency around it, and so everything is destructing that packet of energy because it's not supposed to be where it is. Um, and so the reason I bring this up is because if we were
Right,
to
they're
somehow,
unstable.
exactly, if we were to somehow create an Alcubierre drive and create this bubble of time space, assuming all of the other physics and everything somehow miraculously worked, which it doesn't and it won't. But if we were somehow to create this bubble and transport ourselves to the other side of the galaxy, we could be the radioactive particles. Like we would be radioactive in comparison to the other side of the universe because we are out of dissonance. We're not supposed to be there. And so, like, somehow creating a wormhole and going from one point to another, at that point in the universe or the galaxy or whatever, we become the radioactive isotopes. And the entire universe bombards down on us and destroys us. So um, it's just kind of going into those kind of thought patterns to where, like, yes, we need to explore, we need to do some terraforming and stuff of that nature, but to what extent are we actually able to without changing ourselves in order to make that journey? We
We
would
don't possess the power of the gods at the moment to even think about doing what they did. Um, it's the power that was involved in the moving, the pulling in of Saturn into the sun and changing of our environments, and just phenomenal. And we just don't have that power at the moment.
yeah. And that's kind of what we were talking about during the presentation is the amount that we understand, the amount that we know, the amount that we're seeing, and we're measuring, and we're learning, versus the amount of energy and everything that it would take to do that. Like we're not conscious of the other dimensions and everything that are moving through us, and we ignore it. We take a Western approach to medicine, and we say, like, if it's broke, we'll take it out and put something else there, and then we'll give you these anti-rejection medications so you don't reject that organ, right? And that's the Western philosophy of trying to understand science and mathematics and everything. Like, let's pull this out and put this new equation in, and then it works for a while. Um, and that's why I'm in the medical field, the healthcare field, is like the Chinese medicine is like 5,000 years ahead of Western medicine, and they were talking about spirits and energies and all of those different things, and they were trying to take a holistic approach to medicine, and instead of just pumping a bunch of narcotics or supplements or whatever into a person and hoping that they get better, they say, okay, well, where is the problem? Where is the energy disruption? Where is the blockage? And then that's nice. What's that?
This is the solar system as a Birkeland filament. This is when I went to, I videotaped this and then further worked with the gentleman who developed it. But this was Don Scott sitting down, steering through the solar system as a Birkeland current. So this is literally the Bessel function or the Birkeland current of the solar system. These are different planets, and this is all actual, real. The center is the sun, and it wobbles. The sun even wobbles, and that's what creates the reversals. The reversals is what is necessary to the cavitation reversals of how the symmetry flows here, the axial symmetry, is what's necessary for life. It's what creates the division and the decomposition and the deterioration and the interference, the interference patterns is what's flipping it, which allows it to just die and then restart, die and restart, die and restart. And
it's really nice. I'd love to know what program he used to make that. It's
he designed the software, actually. It's Argos Vu. And we were working together for a while. We're not working together anymore. But yeah, there's Don Scott. There's David Johnson. And yeah, I just figured I'd throw it on the background for something cool to look at that makes sense along with our conversation.
We lost Richard. Did he have something else he was jumping into? Because we were like, felt like we were in the middle of a conversation. I hope I didn't like piss him off or something.
Oh no, he. I'm sure he'll be back. He just got new software or new phone or something. So I'm sure something happened.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I was loving the way the conversation was headed, like some of the stuff we were talking about.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, post back in. Where were you at? I was busy trying to pull this video up for us. So what were you talking about at the end there?
Oh, we were just talking about how like we would become radioactive if we were in another part of the universe or something.
Oh yeah, I like your idea there. Is that your thought? Your idea?
Yeah, it is. So for instance, one of the things that I was running off of is like the laws of physics aren't actually laws. They're laws for our current perception of reality. But like you go to the other side of the universe and they may be completely backwards or different. And so that's kind of like what is considered radioactive could be completely different. And so we couldn't have a Kura drive or a wormhole or anything of that nature and just pop up on the other side of the universe without the whole universe attacking us, really. And so that's kind of what I was talking about. And medicine, why I'm in medicine, like we actually don't know enough about the human body to, like, for instance, this part of the conversation will probably be clipped out, otherwise you'll get kicked off of YouTube. But COVID, like, they actually never isolated COVID ever. They isolated.
And then I won't have to just call it C.
Okay.
And then I won't have to cut it out.
No worries. But yeah, see, they never actually isolated. They never actually isolated it in a lab anywhere. Like your labs that were trying to study it and everything, they requested like pieces of it or whatever, so that they could try and understand it and develop something against it. And the CDC said, like, we haven't isolated a sample. It's like, well, how are you testing it? Like, how are you testing for it if you haven't actually isolated it? And the people who developed the tests, like, they weren't actually testing for it. And so it turns out it was actually an exome that they isolated. And the whole thing about viruses is it's an invisible toxin. They actually still don't know what a virus is. They know they have a couple examples of what our body produces in order to fight them, or stuff of that nature. Like our body creates RNA in order to fight specific toxins. So when you're exposed to extremely high levels of some frequencies and radiations and things of that nature, your body will create these exomes in order to try and tell your body what's going on as like a messenger. like, hey, prepare for this. Here's the information that you need. And yeah, they actually don't know the origins. Some viruses are very well known, and studied, taken apart in a laboratory and everything of that nature. But what they perceive as the virus. But yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah,
The
it's
fictional novels they create in order to make people think they know what they're talking about.
yeah, it's disgusting and disturbing. I like your idea talking about to steer the conversation in this direction, uh, leaving the solar system or leaving the galaxy, and like you said, kind of deteriorating, not being able to live there because we would be radioactive.
A family vacation in a Verbo means leaving.
That's an interesting thought. I've never been like we could probably try to make it generation after generation, but yeah, we could definitely be in different circumstances and different atmospheric pressure or cosmic pressure
Mhm.
that we wouldn't even know about, that we don't even know exists yet.
Yeah, galactic pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about that a little bit more, like our understanding of physics, like physics is physical, right? So it's interpretation of physical phenomena. And we say the laws of physics, but it should really be the laws of physical phenomena of our limited perception. Like that should be the interpretation. Because a true law of physics will not break down if you take it from Earth and you put it in Alpha Centauri, for example. Like a true law of physics, you should be able to use at the micro, like nanometer scale, all the way up to the macro cosmic scale. Like that is a law of physics, and electrical phenomena is one of the only things that you can show that transition from the micro to the macro.
Yeah, because it's scalable, electrical and plasma phenomena.
Mhm.
And they say that it breaks down, they meaning quantum physicists or whatever, materialist reductionists,
Well,
will
that's
say that it's uh, uh, now,
spooky mechanics or quantum mechanics or whatever. Yeah.
right. But it's I don't know. Ultimately, uh, there's so many different directions to go and to take the flow. Um, right. If I could just hop right back into the uh, news here, there's a couple of things I want to cover before we
Okay.
hit, and then we can hop back into the conversation. But yeah, real quick, when you were talking about that, going out of our existence into another place in the galaxy, I really had like this daunting feeling of deteriorating and like realizing that wow, you probably couldn't live in a lot of different situations. You just you might just become toxic. Like you said, that's crazy to think about. But hey, our thinking can turn us toxic.
Hmm.
Thinking can turn us toxic, and our habits and our addictions can toxic. Um, indeed, going from place to place, even on the earth, can turn someone into uh, uh, a bad thing. It makes sense. Like even on the earth, we would be a germ to something else
Guns,
showing
germs, and
up.
steel.
Like guns, germs, and steel. That's how we steal it. That's how we have so many America has so many bases in the world, and no other country has bases all over like we do.
Mhm.
I watched this episode of something the other day, and they were just talking about how many bases there are, United States bases around the world, and it's disgusting. And no other country has anything like that. We're the only country that just bullies our way and puts a runway strip of airstrip here, airstrip there. We apparently we pay sometimes we pay and rent out the space, but then we don't. It's not like we rip it up when we leave. You know, we leave it there. But anyway, so this is an article that finally talks about massive quote unquote pipeline, is what they're calling Birkeland currents in the cosmic web connecting the universe. So I don't even want to read this article or on the Facebook page. At least they're finally talking about it. I'm just disgusted by the lack of notoriety of what they're calling it, what it is, why it's being talked about.
It's the same thing as them calling the aether, calling it the Higgs field. It's the same thing. They're going to call this the universe pipe or pipeline or something of that nature, and it helps people that don't understand the complex terminology and everything. It helps them have some slight understanding of it.
Yeah.
Piques their curiosity to look further. So
it hides the real depth and truth about it under the veil that they name things, and then you do Google searches for those things. You're like, cosmic pipeline. Oh, only 2 results. You know, you're like, okay, what else? They didn't call it anything else, so what should I look it up? You know, like, there's nothing that you can find.
Start throwing keywords on all of the other Birkeland current pages.
Yeah.
So in the comment section, just put that terminology so people will find it.
Yeah, if I was a person that does text, that like involves myself in Vice News and stuff on the comments, actually I probably should. I didn't realize, yeah, there is comments now, but like they ask for all your information or whatever. So yeah, I'm just glad that they're putting it out there, and you know, whether they call Jesus by the name of Jesus or it's a false Jesus, still the name of Jesus is getting out. You know, it's a cosmic rope or a Birkeland current, whatever they're going to call it, as long as the information's getting out. I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with Vice. But I would think that Vice would be a little bit more accurate. But they're bought into the system as well. You can't get that big without buying in or being bought out. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, I got to jump off here. I got another engagement to take care of, but it's been great. Looking forward to the next
awesome. Well, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Aaron, for being here. Yeah, it's pretty much the end here. That was a little bit of the news hour. We had a great conversation, presentation, and yeah, that's a little bit of the geometric view. Hopefully, have you back next week, and we'll have some more friends here and some family. And all right, man. You have a good week, brother.
Yeah, you do the same. Thanks.
Thank you for being on.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
I will never fall, I will never be a better person. You can never see me, I can never be inside of that tree, I can never be inside that forest. You wanna see me, but I'm not seeing you. You wanna get where I am, then you can't find you. You can't find you. I don't wanna the most of the time I cried with the body, cause when I got off and you live in the world, you think of a different substance. off. Nobody get it off. Piece of the pie. If you want a piece of that, you can have a piece of the pie. I'll give you that. I'll give you that much. If you want a piece of this, I'll give you a piece of me. I'm off of your soul. If you want a piece like me. I'll give you a piece of me. I'm off around by the grain of stars. Sometimes it's like some moves you have on having the dance floor too. Real smooth, it's like the moves you have on the dance floor. Real smooth. If you want to think you're real smooth on the dance floor, it's real smooth. I like some moves on the dance floor. Christ be in you, Christ be in all, Christ be in God, all of us, be in us as God is in one in all, as one flesh is one flesh. You're real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. You're real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. Real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. Real smooth out on the dance floor, dance floor.
The geometric view is a Love is Watching product. Love is Watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen.
Yeah, disturb all of us. Disturb. We have hope. Live your life for the cause. Love life. Live it to the fullest.
Eyes all up at the wall, eyes all up in your body.
And I can see straight through with transparent golden scaling. The largest of the atom must embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. There's nothing to do.
has such a wrong passage. Shall you chop it up into
loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism. Need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, zero in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the back, tertiary Christian neurons, synapses and narrow endurance into eternity. I'm a courier, a charismatic attitude, modern meters, even meter, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, trimming your ribbon, you pivot, potential, you curve and cat. Could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best. Could be micro actor, Mackie normal, open-minded, itsy bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. Are you aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did this up? We don't got about not about a girl, but about it, not about a goddess spirit. Get up, what's up? Jedi chapter. Little butter. I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in airdrop, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing.